Fiancé's best friend turned my wedding into a fashion showdown, sparking family drama because I insisted on a matching tuxedo. I'm 26 and getting married to Mark, who's 28, handsome, responsible, whip-smart with the kindest heart and a sense of humor that drew me right in. But let me tell you, planning this wedding has become way more complicated than I imagined, and it all comes down to my little sister Jennifer. Jennifer is 23, tall, absolutely gorgeous, and if I'm honest, she's always turned heads. She's one of those people who just has a presence. But it's not just that. She also happens to be Mark's best friend. And when I say best friend, I mean he's known her for more than twice as long as he's known me. They were co-workers at her high school job, then part of the same gaming group, went off to college together, and guess what? They're co-workers again at his friend John's company. They share the same major, the same nerdy hobbies, and pretty much the same social circles. I only really got to know Mark about 3 years ago. He was that brainy, slightly distracted guy who'd been in college forever getting 2 undergrad degrees and a PhD while Jennifer managed to follow his footsteps into the same major. Now they both work full-time, and besides that, are inseparable, playing D&D, gaming online, heading to conventions together, doing photography side projects, or just spontaneously hanging out. Jennifer even has Mark's encouragement as she pursues dreams of becoming a model and influencer, and her interest in fashion and cosplay is almost contagious. So, when Mark and I got engaged, I was thinking about the wedding party at a family dinner. Even though I have 2 sisters, I really wanted my best friend Helen as my maid of honor. As we talked about it, Mark lit up and admitted he wanted Jennifer as his best man. Of course, Jennifer was over the moon with this idea. Being a female best man was right up her alley. She was completely on board, even if it meant she wouldn't be my bridesmaid. And it sort of solved Mark's problem of not having enough groomsmen, while I had too many bridesmaid contenders. But then came a hitch. What was Jennifer going to wear? I had my dream dress and picked the perfect bridesmaid dresses. Mark's groomsmen, mostly other geeky buddies, were going to be in tuxedos. Cosplay or Ren Fair costumes were instantly vetoed by me. Jennifer, though, wanted to wear this gorgeous, standout dress designed by a friend, mostly red and black, formal and fancy, but very much designed to show off her curves. It wasn't indecent, but Jennifer's tall, stunning, and, to be honest, has a large chest. The dress would absolutely draw attention and make her stand out, especially in the heels she planned to wear. I tried to gently suggest to Mark that maybe Jennifer should wear a tuxedo to match the groomsmen, hinting about matching sides and options for women's tuxes. But when I brought it up directly, Jennifer shot me a death glare and hissed, "Are you fucking serious?" The next thing I knew, she snapped, "Fine. Fuck it. You're the bride. I'll wear the fucking tuxedo." Mark just sighed and muttered something about how ridiculous it was, before caving. "Okay. It's whatever. It's fine." Ever since then, Mark and Jennifer have joined forces in passive-aggressively mocking me and my concerns. Mark will exaggerate ogling Jennifer's chest while Jennifer cracks joke after joke about her boobs, loudly covering her chest and saying things like, "Gotta guard the girls, wouldn't want to knock anyone over," or fake stumbling and blaming her boobs being too heavy. They save this show for when I'm around and seem to find it side-splitting. Jennifer's also made sure everyone knows how disappointed she is not to wear the dress, and that her friend, the designer, is upset too. Meanwhile, Mark has grown noticeably distant and disinterested in planning. When I tried suggesting tuxedo styles for women that wouldn't be too tight around Jennifer's chest and hips, she just glared and showed me a picture of the tuxedo she'd already chosen. "Is this fine, or did you want to further micromanage my specific tuxedo?" That devolved into a fight, with Jennifer accusing me of being a bridezilla and me firing back that she was being a bad sister. She shot back that she wasn't the one being body shamed and told what to wear. I insisted it wasn't body shaming, but she called it the same thing. Then my parents got involved and completely took Jennifer's side. They'd seen her dress and thought it was beautiful, loved her designer friend, and pretty much told me to stop bothering her. My dad said if I was going to make her wear a tux, at least let her wear the one she wants, but even then it's a visually stunning piece, tailored within an inch of its life. Jennifer declared she'd match the color scheme, but I can't help feeling she'll still stand out no matter what. When I try to get Mark to mediate, he just brushed it off. "It's your wedding, do whatever you want." I guess I'll tell her to do whatever you want. He's always conflict avoidant, but now I just feel like I'm planning this alone. And here's the cherry on top. Even though Jennifer and I both have good jobs, we're still living at home with our parents because the housing market is a nightmare. It's been tense, so I've been staying with Mark more and more, and I was supposed to move in officially, but he's been so cold and distant lately. Now everyone's acting like I'm the unreasonable one or the bad guy here, even though Mark and Jennifer are being passive-aggressive and testing every last shred of my patience. Sometimes I wish I just made Jennifer a bridesmaid or put my foot down that Mark couldn't have a female best man. Instead, I'm stuck in the middle of this circus, wondering how I became the villain at my own wedding. Update 1. John, of all people, Mark's boss and gaming buddy, noticed my post. The post ended up getting way more attention than I ever expected. I had barely met this guy before, only a couple of times, and we hardly even talked. But then suddenly there he was, texting me, "This is John, lol call me." So after work, I sat in the parking lot and called him back. The conversation was bizarre, to say the least. John told me he's been married for about 20 years, and that he's tried on multiple occasions to give Mark some relationship advice. According to him, he doesn't think Mark and I are a good match at all. He told me flat out that I should talk to Mark because lately, Mark has been seriously unhappy with our relationship, and especially, overwhelmingly unhappy with the wedding planning. Apparently, it's gotten to the point that my wedding is basically a running gag for Mark and all his friends. I got into it a bit with John during this call, because, to be fair to myself, Mark's wedding ideas have been absolutely absurd. Honestly, just a quick rundown, Mark wanted the entire wedding party to have custom swords, daggers, and some kind of amulets. He wanted everyone to have swords during the ceremony and to hand out themed fantasy amulets to the guests. It sounded more like a Renaissance fair than a wedding. Mark told me that John was willing to pay for the bridesmaids' dresses if we had them done by Jennifer's costumer friend. But that was not happening. I wanted proper, nice bridesmaid dresses from a reputable store, and if they wanted to buy their own dresses, fine. Later, John told me he'd only made that offer as a sort of bet with Mark, like a joke between them. And then there was the mead. Mark was pushing to serve mead at the wedding. According to him, his friend John would supply it, since apparently John makes mead in his basement and has a ton of it. Obviously, I refused. There was no way I wanted to serve basement mead to my wedding guests. John thought that was hilarious. He kept making basement mead jokes, laughing at himself, and telling me how proud he was of his homebrew. He and the guys make toasts with it. Basement mead, it turns out, has become one of their running gags. But it didn't stop there. Mark wanted the band at the wedding to play classical covers of video game and superhero music. He wanted the reception to include a jester wandering around, doing magic tricks and asking people riddles. And then some woman that Mark and his friends know offered to be an elf at the wedding, and Mark wanted to ask me about it. She was going to wear her forest gown, which, according to Mark, is a green Greek toga dress with leaves and elven writing. She'd wear elf ears, too. To me, a wedding is not a costume party, and I have no idea why that was even up for discussion. I brought up all of this to John, and he could recognize every single story I mentioned. He actually listed off some more ridiculous things Mark had wanted but hadn't even mentioned to me. It turns out Mark vents to them about wedding planning all the time, and John and his buddies always just play along. He agreed that I pretty much shot down all of Mark's ideas, but after hearing them all again, can I really be blamed? For me, the point was simple. I wanted a wedding, not a Halloween party. John just laughed about it and said all their ideas were awesome and that I was being way too boring. He went further and told me yet again that he really doesn't think Mark and I are a good match, and that he's told Mark he has to talk to me. Out of curiosity, I asked him if he thought Mark and Jennifer were a better match. Without hesitation, he said yes. That stung, so I asked if anything's ever happened between them. No, he said, I'm 100% certain they've never hooked up. According to him, Mark doesn't have the poker face for that, and the whole friend group is always teasing Mark and Jennifer about it. John claims Mark is totally oblivious, recalling how right after Jennifer's 18th birthday she basically told Mark, I'm 18, so you can fuck me now, and Mark just laughed it off. That honestly does sound like Jennifer. She loves shocking people with those kinds of jokes. John thinks there's more to it, though, and that Mark and Jennifer's characters always date in their games. But, since Mark started dating me, John said they've been the very model of chastity. Apparently, once at an event Jennifer was supposed to kiss Mark, but instead she just kissed her palm and had Mark kiss her hand instead. John swears neither of them would cheat. After that call, I needed answers. So I went over to Mark's house, since he hadn't called or texted me in a while. Sure enough, he basically confirmed everything John said. He told me straight out that I stress him out when I'm around, and he's not even sure about me moving in with him because the whole idea just gives him anxiety. The house, it turns out, was his childhood home, and he was seriously resistant to the idea of changing anything. He just had his stuff everywhere, but when we tried to talk about it, he acted like I could only have some rooms or some space, even though we were supposed to be building a home together. He said he was extremely frustrated with the wedding planning. According to him, he felt like he never had a say, and the dress Jennifer wanted to wear was the final straw. I told him he could pick the groomsmen's outfits, and I told him Jen could have her preferred dress as long as it matched the overall look. But she was obsessed with this dress from her friend's shop, and John, Jennifer, and all their buddies apparently warned Mark that I'd find some way to have a problem with it. He told me that I talk him in circles every time he tries to contribute, but all his suggestions just felt so out of left field for a wedding. He said he'd just about given up by the time I complained about Jennifer's dress, so he didn't even bother fighting me on it. Mark also said it upset him that I was body-shaming Jennifer about her figure and her breasts. He said I was just being jealous and controlling, and that I'd been a bridezilla ever since he proposed. That hurt. When I asked why he'd even proposed if I supposedly give him anxiety and he can't stand the thought of living with me, he admitted he felt pressured. He thought it was either propose or break up, and he hoped things would somehow get better. He didn't even seem sure if he had a good enough reason to break up with me. I told him I never pressured him to propose, but he explained that all my friends and family know I've always wanted to get married before 30. Then, he showed me a document he'd made on his phone where he'd taken notes about what kind of proposal I wanted, just based on all the times I'd talked about it. He said he started the document because it was so obviously important to me to have a perfect proposal, and I talked about it a lot. So he proposed not because he was swept up by love, but because he felt like he either had to marry me or move on, since I was so focused on my plans. For me, there's nothing wrong with having a life timeline. I want to start having kids by my late 20s or early 30s at the latest. When I brought this up again, Mark just said that's fine for me, but he's really unsure about kids or when, if ever, he wants them. He even mentioned that Jennifer isn't sure about having kids at all and certainly isn't in any hurry. I couldn't believe where this conversation was going. I confronted Mark about what had been going on, trying to understand whether this was really about me or if it was more about Jennifer. He told me it had nothing to do with Jennifer and that she was just being short-sighted. When I pressed further and asked if anything had ever happened between them, he assured me nothing had, and I believed him. I found myself asking why he had never dated Jennifer, and he explained that at first, she was too young, then he was seeing someone else, and by the time he was available again, he was already with me. He emphasized how much he valued his friendship with her, said it was worth more to him than any romantic possibilities. He even laughed a little and said she's too attractive to ever actually want him. Apparently, the only reason Mark started dating me at all was because he tried flirting with me at a family party, and I seemed to respond. He never thought of himself as particularly handsome, but to me, he was. PhD, a great job, his own house at just 28, what more could anyone really want? But he just shook his head, saying he'd only ever dated his high school prom date and, after a long gap, me. He seemed almost apologetic about it, as if he had disappointed me by not having some grand romantic past. Then he dropped the real bombshell. He wanted to hit pause on any more wedding or moving plans. He wasn't sure about us. I'd already started crying by then, but when he said he was sorry for messing up my plans, I completely broke down. He just kept saying he hoped things would get better and apologized again. I had to leave as soon as I could trust myself to drive. When I got home, I saw that Mark had already texted Jennifer, "Your sister is crying." Sorry. Apparently, they'd been on the phone almost the whole time I was driving. Of course, my mom knew instantly. She tried to comfort me, but I could see it in her eyes. She wanted to say she told me so. She'd been warning me for ages I was going to drive Mark away. She always thought Mark was better suited for Jennifer anyway. Jennifer said she really did try to make this work, that all she ever wanted was for Mark to be happy. She reminded me she tried inviting me to their gaming nights, that for Christmas before last she'd even bought me a Switch and the games she knew Mark liked. She said she was sorry things ended up this way and practically accused me of not actually loving or caring about Mark, as if I only wanted some generic husband. That stung, especially when she brought up details from my wedding planning and other moments from our relationship, claiming Mark had started to feel ignored or suffocated. She insisted the only reason I liked him was because he ticked boxes on some imaginary list and because he always let me have my way. We started to argue, but our mom stepped in before it went too far. I asked Jennifer what this all meant for her and Mark, and she was clear that he's absolutely her best friend and nothing is ever going to change that. Told me she loves him. When I asked her what kind of love, she completely shut me down and said she didn't want to have that conversation. Our mom kept saying everyone needed to cool off, and that was enough to make Jennifer drop it and leave the room. I still can't shake the sting of something one of my relatives had said: "Why are you marrying your sister's boyfriend?" My mom even echoed the same thing later. She questioned why I started dating Mark as soon as he'd gotten old enough for Jennifer to date and practically implied I shouldn't have been with him at all. But that was never fair. Mark isn't Jennifer's property. Jennifer can have anyone she wants. Just because you know a man doesn't mean you own him. Still, even as she tried to console me, my mother wouldn't stop hinting that I was in the wrong for going after Mark or criticizing every move I made in our relationship. She kept telling me Mark wasn't right for me, and I could tell she believed he would have been perfect for Jennifer, as though whatever I wanted didn't even matter. To make things worse, I overheard Mom talking to Jennifer like I was the one in the wrong, soothing her and telling her she shouldn't stay mad at me, as if I should be begging for forgiveness. And just like nothing had happened, Jennifer slipped right back into her routine, playing games with Mark the next night and chatting with him online as usual. I took Mark's engagement ring and gave it to Jennifer to pass back to him. Later, I saw that while I was in the shower, I'd missed a call from him and a text saying, "Okay. I guess we are broken up then. I'm sorry." Now I'm left wondering whether I ruined everything or if everyone else actually made this harder than it had to be. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since Mark and I broke up, and honestly, I thought I'd be handling this better by now. I've been staying with my friend Helen most nights because being at home with Jennifer and my parents has been awkward. Doesn't even begin to cover it. The first week was the worst. Jennifer acted like nothing had changed, still gaming with Mark every night, still texting him constantly. I could hear her laughing through the walls at all hours. Meanwhile, Mark hadn't tried to contact me once since that pathetic "I guess we are broken up" text. It felt like I was the only one mourning our 3-year relationship. Then Helen suggested we go out last Friday night to help me get my mind off things. We ended up at this trendy bar downtown, and I was actually starting to feel human again when I spotted them. Mark and Jennifer, sitting in a corner booth, but they weren't alone. There was some woman with them I'd never seen before, petite, brunette, laughing at everything Mark said. My stomach dropped. I couldn't help myself. I marched over there, and the look on Mark's face when he saw me was pure panic. Jennifer just smirked and said, "Oh hey, sis. This is Sarah from our D&D group." Sarah looked between all of us like she could sense the tension but had no idea what was happening. "Interesting," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You sure moved on fast, Mark." That's when Mark got defensive. "We're not, this isn't, we're just hanging out as friends. Sarah just joined our campaign and we were explaining the backstory." Jennifer jumped in with that fake sweet voice she uses when she's being particularly nasty. "Actually, Sarah and Mark have been talking a lot lately. She's really into photography too." The way she emphasized talking made my skin crawl. I couldn't stay there another second. I turned to leave, but then I heard Sarah ask, "Wait, is that your ex-fiancé?" And Mark's quiet "Yeah." Helen had to practically drag me out of there before I said something I'd regret. But here's the thing that's been eating at me. Jennifer looked way too pleased with herself. Like she was enjoying watching me fall apart. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. It was Sarah. "Hey, this might be weird, but I got your number from Jennifer. Can we talk?" We met for coffee that afternoon, and what she told me changed everything. Apparently, Mark has been talking about me constantly since we broke up, not in a missing his ex way, but more like he's been trying to convince everyone, including himself, that breaking up was the right decision. Sarah said he keeps bringing up all these complaints about me that she's never heard before, like how controlling I was and how I never appreciated his interests. But here's the kicker, Sarah also told me that Jennifer has been coaching him. She's been telling him things like "you dodged a bullet and you're so much better off without her drama." Jennifer apparently even suggested that Mark should put himself out there and specifically mentioned that Sarah was single and much more compatible with him. Sarah seemed genuinely uncomfortable about it. She said, "Look, I think Mark is a nice guy, but it feels weird that Jennifer is basically trying to set us up when you guys literally just broke up. And honestly, he doesn't seem over you at all. He just seems confused." That night, I confronted Jennifer. I found her in her room, editing some cosplay photos, and I asked her point blank, "Are you seriously trying to set Mark up with other women?" She didn't even look up from her computer. "I'm trying to help my friend move on from a toxic relationship." Toxic? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Jennifer, we were together for 3 years. We were engaged." "Yeah, and you made him miserable for most of it." She finally turned around, and there was something cold in her eyes I'd never seen before. "You want to know the truth? Mark has been complaining about you to me for over a year. He felt trapped. He said you were like a different person once you started planning that wedding, obsessed with having everything perfect and completely dismissive of what he actually wanted." My heart was pounding. "Then why didn't he just break up with me sooner?" Jennifer shrugged. "Because he's too nice. He kept hoping you'd go back to being the person he first fell for. But you never did." I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she had no right to speak for Mark or to interfere in our relationship. But then she said something that stopped me cold. "Besides, you never really loved him anyway. You loved the idea of him. The successful guy with the PhD and the house. You never actually cared about who he was as a person." "That's not true," I whispered, but even as I said it, I felt a horrible doubt creeping in. "Really?" Jennifer's voice was getting sharper. "Name one of his favorite books. Tell me about his thesis research. What's his biggest fear? What does he want to do with his life besides work?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I knew Mark loved fantasy novels, but I couldn't name a specific title. I knew his PhD was in some kind of engineering, but I'd never really paid attention to the details. And his fears, his dreams. We'd been together 3 years, and I realized I didn't really know. "That's what I thought," Jennifer said, turning back to her computer. "Mark deserves someone who actually sees him. Someone who loves him for who he is, not what he represents." I left her room feeling sick. Not because she was wrong, but because she might have been right. Yesterday, Mark finally called me. He wanted to get his grandmother's ring back. Apparently, it was a family heirloom and he needed to return it to his mom. When I went to his house to give it to him, he looked terrible. Like he hadn't been sleeping. "How are you doing?" he asked quietly. "I've been better," I admitted. "You?" He just nodded, not really answering. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment before he said, "I heard you ran into us at the bar. I want you to know that Sarah and I aren't. I mean, we're not dating or anything." "It's okay if you are," I said, and I was surprised to find that I almost meant it. "You have the right to move on." "I don't think I'm ready for that yet," he said. Then, after a pause, "I keep thinking about what you said to Jennifer, about the dress. I've been wondering if maybe I should have stood up for you more." This was not what I expected. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I wonder if Jennifer and I were being unfair to you. The jokes about her chest, the passive-aggressive comments. Maybe we were taking our frustration about the wedding out on you instead of just talking to you about it." I felt tears starting to form. "Mark. But then I remember how it felt when you shot down every single idea I had for our wedding. How you made me feel like my friends were embarrassing and my interests were stupid. And I get confused all over again." We talked for another hour, and it was the most honest conversation we'd had in months. Maybe in our entire relationship. He told me that he'd started to feel like I saw him as a project to be managed rather than a partner. I told him that I'd been so focused on creating the perfect wedding that I'd forgotten to consider what he actually wanted. Do you think we could have worked through it? I asked him as I was getting ready to leave. He was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he said finally. Maybe. But I think we both needed to learn how to actually communicate with each other first. As I was walking to my car, I saw Jennifer's car pulling into the driveway. She got out and started walking toward the house, but when she saw me, she froze. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she called out, "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Mark said from the doorway. "We were just talking." Something flickered across Jennifer's face. Annoyance? Concern? I couldn't tell. But she recovered quickly and smiled. "Good. That's good." I drove home wondering if Jennifer was really just looking out for Mark's best interests, or if there was something else going on. Because the more I think about it, the more I realize that Jennifer has always been a little too invested in Mark's happiness. And now I can't shake the feeling that she's not just trying to help him move on from me, she's trying to make sure he never comes back. The question is, what exactly does Jennifer want? And how far is she willing to go to get it?